been to Talbier, which is where Said's house was located. But one sunny afternoon in 1989, I did visit the house at 360 South Kenter Avenue in Brentwood Heights. And it was a rather bland structure, 2 stories. The house where Adorno had tried to write himself out of exile. And there's all those questions about the possibility of exile in a globalized world. The other is to make gestures towards the dialectic of home and world, perhaps with a sideward glance to De Gaulle. But what I want to add this evening is what might be added to these discussions by some appreciation of how that institution and construct that lingers somewhere in between the house and the home, I'm talking about the household, figures in the constitution of empire. At stake in this discussion are certainly matters of production and reproduction, of the extensivity of colonial frontiers, but also of their intensive expansion into matters of sentiment and matters of genealogy. Since while someone like Ulrich Beck has declared that the household is and imposed, and this remains the case even as the household obtains a new kind of portability and plasticity through various kinds of movements, whether they be migratory movements, whether they be the movements of financialization and default, the carving of ownership into tranches of risk, and their subjection to the logic of securitization. So it's necessary to affirm that today the terms with which the argument of the interview moves, I think we have to ask at a certain moment to what kind of thing could the state provide a solution. And I think it's important in terms of the economy of this interview to go back to the moment when Said insists on the need for Israel to assume moral responsibility. Because it's only from that moment, in my reading of this piece, that we can begin to open a gap between the, Said's kind of literary vision drawn from thinkers like Auerbach of this conflict as a kind of Hegelian tragedy gone wrong, and the famous declaration of Moshe Dayan in 1977, that he said that when Dayan said that the assumption of a solution is fundamentally flawed, and what is at stake in this conflict is how to live without a solution. And it's necessary to trace the ways in which the kind of low intensity conflict that exists in the Middle East is specifically geared to a kind of peace process that always hovers somewhere between a kind of a vision of total war and a vision of total peace. How violence in this context requires an almost semiotic quality that deliberately rides the border between what counts as tolerable and what counts as intolerable in the international sphere. Violence meted out either to attract a reaction or just to stay under the threshold whereby a certain international intervention would make its play. And here I think we see a kind of logic that we can neither account for totally in the classical Clausewitzian view of war as politics by other means, but nor can we account for it totally through Foucault's famous reversal of that formula to describe politics as war by other means. So as long as the question remains how to keep a conflict at a low enough scale so that Israel as a state and society can live and prosper, the sphere of an endless war seems to me almost the only possibility. It seems very unlikely to disappear. To put it in the words of the father of the Israeli soldier who was kidnapped in 2006 and started which was a key event, you'll remember, in the war on Lebanon. At that particular point, this particular father said, where there is a wall, there will always be a tunnel. And we could ask how a house has a particular kind of domicile or dwelling or object of ownership is positioned with respect both to wall and with respect to tunnel. And in this, we would have a precise architectural, if not a topographical description of what's at stake